Hi everyone, good evening. Before I bring Sai on, I just want to say that we've got two more direct inputs before the end of the year, which is one of them is on Monday with someone great PR who are going to talk us through kind of when the best time to get PR is, what you can be doing yourselves, what are the best things to have for a PR to work with, planning ahead and all of that stuff as well. And then the final one is on Wednesday with Panic Shack, who are an amazing band from Cardiff who've played Future Yard before and are booked to play South by Southwest next year. They're doing Eurosonic in January. They've just been awarded PRS funding, so kind of getting them at a point where we can talk about their experiences as emerging artists. So this evening we've got Simon Rix, who some of you will know from Kaiser Chiefs, who I know as one of my Leeds pals, who does like really, really great stuff in Yorkshire with some really, really great supportive people up there. Sai has got a management company that he manages a number of Leeds-based artists, including Treeboy Arc, who are playing Future Yard on New Year's Eve as well. So I'm going to bring Sai in. Hi.
Hello. How are we doing?
I always forget to say as well, if anyone's got questions, just throw them in the chat and then I'll try to kind of like seamlessly and professionally get them into the conversation as if it's my own question. And if it's not relevant, but it needs covering, then I'll whack it in at the end. So, Sai, yeah.
Hello.
What we try and do with these conversations, particularly with artist managers, is I think it's kind of demonstrating that there's not really like like an archetypal artist manager or like even like a music industry professional that like we're all products of all of our own experiences. We've all got strengths in different areas. And for a lot of our artists that are looking at management, that it's not about just getting a artist manager, it's about getting the right one that kind of suits their needs and their personalities and their goals and their ambitions. So I wanted to kind of like start this off by, I guess, kind of going back to when, like when you were starting Kaiser Chiefs and what that was like for you and your experiences as kind of being those like young lads that had started getting, buzz like around the band in different cities and things like that. What was that like for you at that point?
Obviously, that was good. I think the important thing about Kaisers is like we were one of those very slow overnight successes. So we had maybe about 5, 6, 7 years of mooching around, doing gigs in Leeds, and then going further afield in a band called Parva and Runston Parva. And we got signed to an indie, to a Beggars label actually. Made an album which never came out, got dropped. Tried to get re-signed and all that stuff. So there's a lot of experience there, which really put us in kind of good stead of like how not to do things, I guess. Or I always sort of say it's a bit of a apprenticeship. I don't know what the modern term for apprenticeship is, but like we got to have a go at it where it didn't really matter. And then, so by the time kind of Kaiser Chiefs thing came along, we stopped that band and we scrapped all the songs, same people, and then we just wrote some new songs and started again. Pretended we'd never been in that band. And yeah, from that moment, it was pretty quick. We got signed in about a year. We got signed and we were touring at a really good level and going to cities that we'd previously gone to and played to 10 people. And suddenly the room was full. And then the next time we went to that city, we were in a bigger room and all that stuff. So, it was a very exciting time, like 2004, 5, 6 for Kaiser Chiefs. It sort of just exploded.
Yeah, I think that's like more common than people think is the fact that, the bands that we see, like, we hear on the radio when we see like on the telly and stuff like that, there generally is like a kind of practice band that's happened first. If you look at like yourselves with Parva and like, I think it was like the 1975, there's like people that are doing other bands and done different things before they've come together. Like, it does feel
like Yard Act are a really good example of a whole group of musicians, I think, who've done their time, each one in a different, different bands. I think Ryan and I think James were friends, weren't they? But they weren't in the same band, and they've all been in loads of bands, really slogging it out. and then finally, like, I'm proud of them. I love it because they've, like, found the, it's about magic. I think, there's luck and there's, being ready and, writing good songs and working hard. And I think there's always a little tiny bit of, like, magic of, like, you get the right set of musicians together and they sort of create something which is unique and that sort of people can buy into. So I always, like, that's always one of these, like, sessions. People always are kind of, what's your piece of advice? And it's a really boring, obvious piece of advice, but I think keep going. And is the one, if you want to be a successful manager or musician or whatever, it's just about finding your opportunity and finding your gap, and and then making the most of it, obviously, as well.
I think one of the questions that I get asked a lot is around age, particularly with, like, people that are kind of graduating, like, that are doing, like, a music course at uni and stuff like that. And there's still this kind of feeling with the industry that it really kind of, like, favors the young. But I think, looking at Yard Act as an example for that, like, not that I'm saying they're old by any means, and, like, obviously don't tell them that I said that at all, but, like, I think the fact that people do kind of find this success with a project that the right people have come together, and the songs are there, and they've got the kind of, like, the time in their diary to really commit to it and the will to do it. It shows that it can kind of happen at different points and still, like, garner that kind of attention and garner that, like, industry excitement as well.
Definitely. I think there's a thing where people like new shiny things, don't they? So I think people like, 18-year-olds that are fresh out of the box and they've got exciting new songs and maybe are doing it, what's the word, instinctively, maybe, like, they've not got any, not been had any bad experiences that will reflect, on their thing. So what's the word I'm looking for? Not being worn down by it at all. But yeah, I think
not jaded yet.
Jaded is the word. That's the one. Yeah, I'd actually self-esteem. Obviously, she's been through a few different things. I think it's definitely shown that there is definitely more and more. I think it doesn't matter how old you were. I mean, we were lying about our ages. Like when we were in Parva, we were about 22 about that time when we got signed, and then we stayed being 22 for about 5 years. But no one really. We was just used to, like, just ignore the question basically and just sort of be like, "Oh, you're 22." We just used to stayed the same age for a long, long time. And same as, like, but that's kind of what everyone did. Like, I know that Franz Ferdinand, like, Alex from Franz is I don't know, it's about 50 something, isn't he? I think, but he was just ignoring the question because it is irrelevant, really.
It is irrelevant. Yeah, totally.
I do think if you were in a big record company, I think the kind of excuse sometimes is that if you're investing in someone, you don't want, you want to make the most of, like, a career and all that stuff. But the careers in music are so hard to keep going nowadays. I think that, like, if you can get 5 years or 10 years of, a really good level, you've done really, really well. So I think that it matters less age, basically.
I think it definitely matters less than it did. I remember when I worked at the PR agency that I worked at when I was a lot younger, and we had and it was pop, like, so obviously there's a lot more kind of focus on people's ages in that, and we had an artist manager that kept on going, like, somebody keeps changing the name of the age of this artist on Wikipedia. Can you, like, change it back? And we were like, no, because somebody's, like, got, like, cited, like, evidence that they're this older age. Like, it was just mad. Like, people were trying to kind of cover people's ages up massively, and it just doesn't feel that it's, like, I feel like we're celebrating kind of, like, wisdom and experience now a lot more than we used to be. So
I think to do that thing, like there's a rewarded is, like, hard work and, like, experience is more rewarded, I think, now as well, with, like, another band that are quite close to my heart with Life, who I don't know if anyone's familiar with.
Yeah.
But, like, I love those guys as well because they started off they were in another band as always called The Neat, and, like, I remember I was kind of there at a gig and they gave Steve Lamacq a CD of, like, lots of tracks or whatever, and then he played that, and then he played all of their songs, and when they changed to being Life, he's really supported them through that, and then now they've kind of, like, not guaranteed, I'm sure, but they always seem to get on B or A list radio at 6, and that's just from that relationship and keeping going and keeping interacting with the people and everything. I just think it shows that, yeah, that's the reward for like doing the hard yards basically, as opposed to just turning up. So I think that, yeah, being older and like, I think more even major record labels, this quite like, rather than picking up a band an artist that's done nothing, if someone's done a first album with a smaller label and sort of proved themselves and grown their following on Spotify and all that kind of thing, I think majors are looking at all those stats as well, aren't they, as opposed to just who can we pick up that looks exciting, got a bit of hype.
Yeah, I think so. I think there's more of a kind of a desire for the tried and tested, because like, you know, even though the major labels still have like a shit ton of money, they can't take as many risks as what they used to. So they do like to kind of see that there's been some audience development and there has been a bit of a journey first, and that there's things that are building up, because it's so much more difficult for a label these days to build stuff from scratch, isn't there? Like to kind of like take this brand new project, brand new band, and kind of just start from scratch, when there's a real kind of like, I guess, a lean to, now that we have social media is so prevalent that it is, that artists and bands can kind of do it themselves to start off with, that they can be more responsible for building up those audiences.
Also, catalog is responsible. Like in streaming, it's all catalog, isn't it? All old songs are streaming much more than new songs, which is a new thing. Because I think in the past, labels, it was always about shift. Like if you can get a new thing and get it moving, then you can sell some CDs, tapes. Whereas now it's like, actually they're making loads of money out of the Rolling Stones and whoever else, you know. So,
yeah, gotcha. What I want to know from you is I guess like how much when so you'd done Parva and the Kaiser Chiefs were starting to kind of like start putting singles out, is what level of an awareness of the way that the music industry was constructed, like the way that yous were going to earn your money, like what yous needed to do to be a successful band, like what was your awareness like back then?
I think we were okay. I think that, you know, in Parva we had no idea, and like I always have a story about like in Parva we were sort of in Leeds and we were showing off and we had a record deal and like we'd quit our jobs and like, you know, we were being like being cocks basically. And then about a year later we were back behind the bars in the, you know, in the places we used to work or whatever, having, you know, not been very successful. And that was a really good lesson of like, so when we were in Kaisers, it was like we'd done loads of stuff. We did quite a good job, DIY job of like, we did a single, we put it out on Drowning Sound, which was like his website, isn't it, and had a little label attached to it. And found a press person and found another manager, actually, like a London manager, like a more guy who was more connected. We had a record deal like, on the table, but we were touring and we're like, our thing basically in Kaisers was we got to a point where someone had to give us a record deal. It wasn't like we wanted one or we needed one. It was like we were on the radio, we were on the TV, on MTV2. We were in Enemy constantly, and we still weren't signed. And we were just like, well, someone will sign us eventually, because people were still turning us down at that point. Like, even though we had all the songs, we had like Oh My God and Abject to Riot and all those songs every day. And we were still getting turned down all the time by labels because of Parva or being old or loads of things. It took like no one really wanted to sign us, which is, you know, I think quite weird. But eventually, someone did. But yeah, we signed it. I remember like the first time we signed our record deal, it was like champagne and whatever, having a party for 2 days. And then when we signed the Kaisers one, we just did it backstage in Hull before we did. People just turned up with the contract and we signed it, and that was it. And it was like, right, go on stage. Because it was important, but it was just a logistical thing as opposed to something to really like get excited about. Because we knew that's what, you know, that doesn't really matter. That's where the hard work starts, if you know what I mean. It's like, you've got a deal, great. Now you've got to work twice as hard as you worked before to be successful, and because there's a load of other people being signed and being, you know, I don't know, maybe it's not so competitive as that. So, and then stuff like publishing and like, still with me, like now I've started doing some managing stuff. I've actually really sort of tried to actually get it explained to me again and remember it with how it all works with PRS, PAPL, etc., etc. Because I always kind of understood it, but then I always was like, oh, but which bit is that? And so, but yeah, it's obviously like an important part of it. And I don't think when we were in Parva, we weren't claiming all of our money and stuff because we just didn't really have a full idea of what we were entitled to. Because no one really, I think there's lots of schemes now, isn't there? I'm sure there's one of you guys, and then Music Leeds in Leeds is very good at like having these sort of seminars and stuff where telling people how to sign up for things and what they are entitled to. So, and those bits of money really count, you know, like when you want to go to London and do a show and you're only getting paid 50 quid. Actually, if you can get paid another 50 quid for being played on the radio or whatever, then it helps to make it work, because it's hard. That's the really hard bit when you've got no money, but you've got to invest in the future.
I mean, I think that's the big difference, really, isn't it? If you're looking back to kind of when you were putting those kind of first singles out as Kaiser Chiefs and the situation that artists are in now. Like, first of all, you know, do you need a record deal like these days? Like, you know, I guess back in whenever that was, like 2004, 2003, was it? Like, you did, like, you couldn't really self-release, could you? Like, you had to kind of do it through a label. And now the kind of landscape's changed and people do need to have an awareness of like where that money's coming in. And I guess, you know, the fact that like that we do have stuff like what we do with Propeller and what you start doing Leeds with Launchpad and like Music Leeds and stuff, like it does mean that like artists should like develop a more kind of like rounded look at it. But what's the reality of like that being in that situation where you're kind of like an emerging band who have got loads and loads of potential, have got loads of people talking about them, you're getting radio play. What's the reality of the situation that you're kind of going to go, right, okay, well, I need to know about how publishing works. Like did you just get like swept up along in it a little bit, or do you think there was like kind of moments to take stock over how to look after yourselves?
I think that a combination of the two. So we had, like, because of Parva, we had a publishing deal because of those guys. We had quite a good lawyer. So I kind of always trusted it was that the contract bit was all right. But on the publishing deal, we did well out of our publishing deal, and there's something went on, but we actually managed to sort of get some extra money right at the beginning of Kaiser's from our previous publishing deal, which really, really helped.
Okay.
But records wise, like, you're right, because there was a ceiling really of what we could do on our own, because we put a record out and sold it out and everything, and we had it on the radio, and as I say, we were getting press and all that stuff, and we were doing all that stuff without any real PR, like anybody really working for us. We were just sort of doing it ourselves. But the kind of getting it in the record shops, you know, getting the racking in HMV and stuff, that wasn't something that you could do as an independent artist. You needed a label. And even, well, so two things. I think one is when we signed to our label, because there wasn't many offers, our record deal was rubbish and continues to be rubbish. So we don't make that much money out of those amazing songs, which is a shame. But that was just I've done fine overall, so I'm not really complaining.
Yeah,
but it could have been better, basically, I guess is the thing. But the thing with that was we signed to an indie, and like almost immediately they were like that it was too big for them to cope with the number of pre-orders for the album. So they immediately like sold, I don't know quite how it worked, but sold our marketing to Polydor. So we ended up from being like unsigned, couldn't find anyone to sign us. Then we were signed, and then suddenly we were on a, like, basically, to all extents and purposes, on a major and like a priority act on a major. And like, to us, we still really talk to the same like our A&R, whatever, was still the same person at the indie. So it was just that there were some bigger marketing people spending lots and lots of money on TV advertising. And so you get into that, don't you, where we, again, didn't make loads and loads of money out of employment, less than people would think. And one of the reasons was because the bad record deal, but also we spent loads of money on TV advertising, of which we paid for 50% of, which I don't think we knew at the start. But then, you know, we were inquisitive, like, well, where is the money?
Yeah.
It's getting, and, like, me in particular, I think I was more than anyone trying to like make sure we were doing as well as we could do. But part of the thing was like that was about investment as well. So we were spending, you know, we were kind of using the album as a marketing product, you know, which is kind of what it is, to play bigger gigs. So we weren't getting that much money from the record company, but we were playing Earl's Court and it was sold out. So that was fine.
I feel like that's been the structure of the music industry, like for quite a while before. Now, obviously, with the spotlight on streaming revenue and the fact that we've just been through a pandemic that stopped everybody making money from live, is that the way that I always looked at like a record deal is that it basically marketed all of the other stuff. Like, so that, you know, you go into this record deal where they spend lots of money on marketing your records, but they're also marketing you, meaning that you're going to play in front of more people, that your music's going to be used on more things, that so those revenues are going to come in from other areas. But you're basically like, you know, with the actual kind of like recording of your music, that is just basically paying for marketing. And it always felt like in my head, I think I always like justified that as like that feels like that's going to prop up all of the things that an artist or a band can actually make money from. And I think it's only like in the last few years now that it's kind of going, actually, no, that's not really that cool either. Because like the record deal company are going to make more money than you are off your music.
Yeah. It ended up being like that, I think, and I think that, you know, artists as well were responsible for it as well. I kind of let it happen where it was like there's loads of money sloshing around, but fundamentally the only way I could make, you know, any profit, like I always say, like my house and stuff, is paid for by live. You know what I mean? None of that's paid for by records or maybe a little bit of publishing, and that's kind of wrong, because what happens if you know, it means if you don't tour, you don't make any money, which seems like a shame, but I think it's changing now, isn't it? And it took me a while to get my head around it. I think like when I'm talking to new artists, it depends on the artist, but I still think like a hard ticket is so good, because, you know, getting a follow on Instagram or someone to listen to you on Spotify, it's all very passive, where someone going out and spending what is quite a lot of money nowadays on a ticket to come and see you, and then they might buy a t-shirt while they're there. That's a lot more money that you're getting you know, directly from a fan, you know. So that's why sometimes you got like UK artists and they've got loads of streams in, I don't know, Estonia or something. It's kind of useless to them, you know, because like the amount of, and not to be too businessy about it, but the amount of money you can extract from that person is really little, you know what I mean? Even if they listen to you all day every day. Whereas actually, if you've got a band in Leeds and they can play to 500 people in Leeds, well, there's actually some money that then you could invest and then go to like Manchester and then go to Sheffield and then go to London and then, you know, just build it. So I think there is still a sort of place for that which is old school. I think there's still a place for that old school mentality of like sell tickets, because that's how you might make your money. But then also you get loads of artists now who are, you know, if you can get enough streams, then you can do, you know, it can be an income, can it, easily, and, you know, a nice monthly income every month. And it's not the case that every artist is someone that people want to go see live. I kind of feel it's like more and more two different things. People go see live music and then they listen to music at home. Like, I don't know, like my example is like, I know the Cortinas. I mean, they can play to, I don't know, 60,000 people in Manchester, but they're not streaming. They're not this. But then like you get an artist I've never heard of who can play to 100 people in Leeds, but they've got 18 million streams. You know what I mean? It's like,
it's definitely something that we see here as well. It's just like, I think it's even like conversations that we have, like when we're looking at booking bands too. It's just like, you know, they might have like a really high profile booking agent that's like trying to push you to book them. And then you're kind of looking to see across like the different socials and obviously like it isn't just artists that can see where people are listening to the music on Spotify. That's kind of just on your profile. And you have to kind of like make that decision of just like, okay, do we think that this band from Bristol or Birmingham or whatever that haven't got that many streams and they haven't got that many kind of like people liking their posts on Instagram, do you think that people in Merseyside are going to buy a gig ticket? Because it does feel like, you know, buying a gig ticket or buying a piece of merch on Bandcamp or something like that, that's like commitment, isn't it? That's like actual kind of like, you know, like it's streams still feel very, very passive, but it still feels like an entry point to me. that
definitely.
like unless you're doing decent streams and like you've got that engagement on your socials in different areas, then how are people going to know to go and watch you? Like
And
it's
you also
just
get
like
that thing of
it's like
how even people with quite a lot of streams, they can have got them in quite a passive way from being on the right a
yeah,
certain playlist.
yeah,
Which doesn't actually mean anything. In Liverpool, it might mean something in somewhere or whatever. But yeah, it seems like it's quite a weird system where I think Spotify is interesting because streaming is interesting because I think it was meant to be like a bit of a leveler where everyone can put their music online and everyone can be their own in charge of their own career or whatever. But then actually, there's still some gatekeepers. They're just different ones, and to some
yeah,
extent, to me,
yeah,
it's more
totally.
confusing. Because to me, like when we were around and like I talked to Whiskers, who's a mutual friend who was also in a band at the time, it felt like there was a ladder. And like the reason we were able to be successful is we kind of knew what the steps were. If you could I don't know, do something with gig wise, there was like a progression, but then also, get a play on evening session, which is Radio 1, then get in the hot new band, the single of the week or whatever, an enemy, and then next step would be get on XFM and do a session or whatever. And there was like a ladder where you were, getting the features and stuff. And if you did enough of the steps, then people would take notice, and then you would get offered a gig or whatever. You'd get a booking agent, it felt like not everyone made it up the ladder, but you were sort of there was a little bit of a route that if you could follow.
Yeah.
Whereas now it feels a bit like it's just like everyone for themselves and like everyone's got to make a different path, which is good because everyone is different, but just it feels like feels hard, and also what you're saying about you don't need a record company, but then if you're going to do it on your own, then you're making decisions about whether you need a radio plugger or you need a PR person to do that, or there's like online pluggers, isn't there? And there's all sorts of things you can spend your money on easily. That maybe some,
there's a lot of people that make those like decisions very rash about who to spend their money with as well, based on somebody sending an email and going, "What are your plans?" That kind of like if you're a new band and there's other bands talking about you, or like you've been on a Spotify playlist or something, then people will approach you. And you might think, that sounds good. Yeah, that's who I'll give my £500 to that I've set aside for this. We've got a question which I think is kind of quite relevant to this point, which is, what do you see as the biggest difference from when you started up until now with a new album coming in marketing and press? And I think that's what it is, isn't it? It's just like it used to feel like there was like a linear path in a way, but now like it's totally different.
Also, I think the thing with what the summit is as well is like in the past, so with a single particularly, it's like the day it comes out was the peak. So it's like Abject Right's coming out in November the 4th. Then that week is going to be its highest chart position, and then from then onwards it's going to go down. And like people will it'll be on the radio for a bit, I guess. From there, people will know it because people have bought it, so they're playing it at home, I guess. Whereas now, I mean, we released a single in about a month ago now, and it's just moving along, and everyone's super happy with how it's going. And for me, it's like just kind of moving, it's kind of going up and down a little bit, but they're quite happy. And then also a good example, actually, a better example is band Youth Sector that I look after, and they are probably not allowed to say because it's a secret, but anyway, I'm going to say anyway, so it's our secret. They released a single 18th of October, and then nothing happened. And then about a month later, Lamac played it, and Chris Hawkins played it on 6, and Jack Saunders played it, and then a few weeks later, Jack Saunders played it again, just like this week. And then in January, something's happening. It's a secret thing. Whereas a big other thing's happening with the single in January, which will be 3 months after it's out.
Yeah.
That's kind of like, that's, I think, even past what people normally think would be the progression or whatever, what's it called, impact date.
Yeah.
But just shows, like, I think with the patience of like you stick it out, and then you've got to keep working it and keep doing gigs and keep on your socials and just keep turning the screw basically, and give things time to to move along. At the same time, so I'm going to like contradict myself here slightly, but then you've got DSPs, and they want constant content, don't they? So you've got like the old world almost, where it's building. But in the background, I think like really with USEX, we should have like had like just a DSP song maybe come out and not pushed it to radio or anything. Just because you've got to try and keep all of the things happy. All of that it's hard, I think, and complicated. It's very I think it was simpler in the old days, and also I think like but also I think was it more of a closed shop? I think it was more I think you could more fool people, like what I was saying when we just lied about our ages. You could more be like, there's so many bands, weren't there, that had hype, like loads of hype. Jolene and the Jing Jang Jong, I'm thinking of loads of hype, get signed for like
blast from the past,
and then do nothing because there's nothing there really.
Yeah,
and I think those sort of people that are just, there's nothing really there. There's less of those, I think, now.
I think so. I think it is difficult to kind of fake stuff. I mean, when I started working in music PR, I kind of like didn't really know very much about how the industry was structured, but was at a point where I used to DJ, and I used to kind of like find loads of like songs and kind of like weird remixes and stuff on Hype Machine and all of the blogs. So I kind of started working in online PR, and that was like my first industry job. And it was mad watching, like you'd see like a new band or a new producer or something like that get to #1 on the Hype Machine, which for anyone that doesn't know what Hype Machine is, it's like an aggregator that pulls together loads and loads of blog posts. So it tells you how many times a song has been covered on blogs. So if there's a real hype around a particular song, then it goes to the top of Hype Machine. And there'd been like bands and artists that had never played live before getting major label record deals off the back of like the fact that a load of blogs are writing about them. And it was just like, it was chaos. It was, and it meant that like you'd get somebody that was really underdeveloped, like in the sense that, you know, they'd never done a live show, and they'd created something in their bedroom and then just whacked it out on SoundCloud on loads of blogs, and just had no sense of kind of like developed artistry or anything like that at that stage, who were just kind of like pushed out dead quick because of the nature of like online, that, you know, and people having that kind of like short attention span, is that they needed to get an album out straight away. And it just mean that people would like rush these albums, get them out, and then they were shit. So it does feel like we're kind of skirting different elements of those kind of like old ways of working in what we've got in front of us now. But it feels like sometimes it feels like there's loads of opportunity, and then other times there feels like there's just so much noise and there's none. Like I just feel like it's really, really strange at the moment. So it's those things, like it's amazing what you've just said about youth sector, because I've experienced similar things where you think that you can't determine anymore the life of a song. And, you know, we talk about like the way that we'd lead into release dates, and that would be like when everything happens. And now it starts with your release date. And it used to be that, you know, you go 6 to 8 weeks for a single campaign. And now it's just like the single kind of determines that, doesn't it? Like that's really, really like heartening to hear. I think that getting picked up and then, you know, building a life of its own after what you think is probably the period that it should have stopped is quite heartening, I think, considering it's like quite tough to make and expensive to make music as well. Like not have to have lined up straight away, and you know.
We just presumed it would get overtaken by Christmas. You know, you might have some life till Christmas, and then we'd have to do some, you know, think about something else to do after Christmas, like a new song and whatever. But actually, yeah, the biggest thing is going to be after Christmas. So we just like adjusted the plan slightly, and it's very positive. But I think you can do that as well. I think that's more. It's easier now, isn't it, to just adjust the timeline.
Yeah.
Because you're not like held up. You know, there is some physical records, but it's not important, or it's, you know, getting to shops and stuff. You can sort of just change the date on a website, and then you're done. Oh yeah, it's totally different. I think, you know, we encourage all the artists that we work with at Future Yards to have those timelines.
you know, to put together those plans so that there's an ice cream van outside my house. It happens every time I do these from home because I live in the 1960s. But yeah, we kind of advise everyone to come up with timelines and plans and to plot what their next year looks like. But in the same breath, be ready to change it. But having that starting point is so good. But be ready for different things to determine like what changes in that plan.
Definitely. So it's super important to be like try and just have like as well. I think with in the old days, whatever. I think there was a certain amount of like you made some music that was an album or whatever, and then you put it out, and then you took a breath, and then you made some more music, and you put it out and whatever. Whereas now I think like you actually have to have loads of music all the time. So just have to constantly have a bank of music just in case if it's going well, so you can take advantage, or if it's not going well, then you can have, you know. You can, if it's not going well, then put some more. It's almost like whatever. If it goes well, put some more stuff out. If it goes badly, put some more stuff out. I think,
but just get ready to go.
Like a big bank of music and like, I think you know one of the things I experienced with younger artists is just which it was good for us, you know, like so we write a song in rehearsal, we go to rehearsal, write a song, and be like, right, this is the best song ever. Let's put it out. But we actually couldn't because it wasn't physically possible. Whereas now it is. So I just all the time is just trying to get people to just wait and just like take it slowly, and it's really unexciting and all that stuff. But like, I know you've got this really good song, but let's wait till you've got 4 really good songs, then we can upload them all together, and we can have like you say, a plan like for 6 months or a year, whatever. And we can make the most of it. And if there's some money to spend, like if you've got some funding or if you've got some money that you want to spend, then we can work out how we want to spend it and not spend it like straight, like maybe do a song and then see how it goes. And like, you know, just like get the introducing players and do the bits and pieces, you know, just do the fundamentals first. Yeah, rather than just like stick it out and then it doesn't do very well. And then that's the end of that. And then you're just where you were before, but without one of the songs.
Yeah, I think that's the most important thing, isn't it? If you spend like time like perfecting something, is that when you release it, make sure that you're doing everything that you can to kind of like to hit those targets, to think about who you want to hear it. Like it feels like crucial to me, but I'm not.
What's going to happen? 60,000. Is it 60,000? It's probably gone up by now. 60,000 songs per day going on Spotify. Is that right?
It's 80.
It's gone up. It's absolutely mad. So, what's going to make yours stick? I guess you got to think about that because otherwise you're dead.
Yeah, I've got a good question, which isn't really related to what we've been talking about, but I kind of want to know the answer. Do you feel, for you, you're more or less affected by criticism of your music now when compared to when you first started out?
Less, I think. Like, I think we had a period of time where we didn't care at the beginning. When everything's going amazing, I think you don't care. And then maybe when you have a little bump and then you've got a few bad reviews or a few people, you know, slagging you off or whatever, then it's a bit upsetting. Especially, I think one of the things, this affected, so when Nick was in the band, our old drummer, I think it affected him more than anyone.
Yeah.
Is like, you spend absolutely ages. You spend every day for like 18 months thinking about this record, like what the snare sound is, what the chorus is to that song, how it's going to beginning and end. Every little detail you've thought about it, the artwork, the name of it, you've thought about it, and then you put it out, and on the first day, someone who's writing in, I don't know, Q or whatever the equivalent would be nowadays, goes like, 2 out of 10. I didn't really like this bit. And you're like, just fuck off. Because like, that's just your one person's opinion, isn't it? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like, it took you 2 minutes. We had a test actually on our 5th album, we had a poem in the middle of 2 songs, a song, poem, song near the end. And like, we had a test because like, it was something you had to mention in a review if you'd listened to the album. So it was a really good test of who's listened to the album or not. Do you know what I mean? So, and that's when you sort of be able to be not affected by it, because you're like, if it was a poem read by Bill Nighy, do you know what I mean? It's like, it's a thing you'd mention in a review.
Yeah.
So like all the reviews that didn't mention it, you didn't have to read them. Perfect. They're all absolutely not important because they've not listened to the album. So yeah, those things. And I think maybe sometimes there's a couple of what do you call them? People who were contemporaries who sometimes weren't very nice. I guess that was worse than anybody who was a reviewer or whatever. But in general, but then now I think our thing is like we just put that song out the other day, and I thought like for me, I was interested in what people thought of it. Like we put it out, and I think that's kind of modern, is that you can put something out and then be like, I wonder what people are going to think of it, because it's like not that Kaiser Chiefs see what we've done, and in the past that's gone well and badly. So I was like, I think it's good. Like I was like, I think this is a good song, and I think if an artist stuck it out that wasn't us, I'd be like, oh, that's a good song. So that's a good reason to put it out. But equally, I was like, I wonder if, you know, your die-hard Kaiser Chiefs fans would be like, oh, this doesn't sound like whatever, Ruby. So, but I was genuinely interested. So when it came out, I was like interested to what people thought, and we were playing it live. And so, you know, there was a live version, which is obviously more guitar-y, rocky or whatever.
Yeah.
And what people thought of that in comparison, and if it fitted in the set. And so, I reckon maybe, I mean, I'm older now, I'm 45, so I think I'm quite sort of settled with myself and what I think about our music and everything. So I was actually, this is the first time, or one of the first times, I'm like, oh, I'm genuinely interested in what people think.
Do you think that attitude has come from the fact that you're working with artists in the way that you are? And maybe that you are kind of like, you have got that hat on a little bit more?
Yeah, definitely think with the song. So I listen, like, because I spend all day, well, not all day, but a lot of days going, no, that song's not good enough. And this song's good, and this bit's good, but you should try this. What about working with this producer? Then I think when I'm doing, that's why I think when I was listening to that song, I was like, yeah, that's a good song. And if like someone played it to me, I'd be like, yes, well done, that's a good song. So that's why I felt like we had to put it out, even if like we didn't think it was exactly what Kaiser Chiefs is. So yeah, no, I mean, I think the managing thing's interesting, and I think also, I told someone else how those like success is, you know, like is weird because we are on the Radio 2 A-list at the moment, Kaisers, and that's good. I'm pleased. Like I got that email, going to do that. I'm like, cool. But much more of a buzz about someone getting their first Lamac play or their first play on Jerry Bradley on Radio 1 or Jack Saunders or whatever. Because that's much more momentous, that you know, your first play or you're getting the gig supporting a big band or whatever. Like I get more of a buzz out of them getting those things than really I do out of Kaiser's getting similar sort of success, I guess. Because I guess we're used to it, or it's expected, or also I guess we have got a team like with those successes, like say a Mac play or whatever. I'm hands-on trying to make that happen, whereas with the other thing, I'm sort of more doing the song, and then it's kind of like, even though I'll do what I need to do, it's there's a team of people doing it. So
yeah,
I guess I don't feel as personally responsible for the advertisement on the radio somehow. I don't know how that works, but
that makes perfect sense to me. It really, really does. How do you pick out which artists that you want to work with?
So I think it's a combination of things.
What's attracted you to the ones that you work with at the moment?
So good. I mean, I'm attracted to, like, I am a song person, I think. So good songs and attitude and stuff. But yeah, I think you'll have a similar thing. So I do some mentoring and some managing, and then like it's there's like a fine line kind of between them. But I feel like the ones I manage, and I've sort of been working this out as I go along. So there's a couple of mistakes, but it's about the people who will like. So I'm going to use Kaiser Chiefs as an example. In Kaisers, when we changed the name to Kaisers. Like if someone emailed us and we're like, "Oh, I'm interested in like coming to a gig," we would be emailing straight back. We'd be inviting them to Leeds, going like, because our room was rubbish that we used to rehearse in. hiring a different room, getting in there, doing a showcase for them saying they didn't want to sign us. You know, doing the radio, doing, you know, making the most of the press opportunities. Like one of our breaks was to do with like a guy who came to review a club night that Nick and Ricky used to do. And we were in a band as well, sent him some stuff, just making the most of every opportunity and working. And like, I mean, we spent a lot of time in the pub, but we were working. If we were, it sounds like a joke, but we were like, we'd have a notebook and we'd be like writing down stuff we were going to do and how we were going to do it and whatever. It was all band 24/7. And then now you get some artists, you send you some music, you're like, this is ace, this is really good, we should do this, we could do that, we did that. Right, cool. And then a week later they haven't replied, and then someone else emails you and goes like, oh, would they like to do this thing? So you text them, hey, do you want to do this thing? They don't reply. You're just like, well, I can't be bothered. So it's just about proactive people, I think, is the main thing. At least one of the band has got to be absolutely insanely proactive. For me to, because I'm a person as well where I will like generally, someone texts me or emails me, I like to deal with stuff like fast and like work hard and be
on to
successful.
the next thing, isn't it? It's just like, right, you've boxed that off, so now I can concentrate on something bigger. I'm exactly the same thing. Is that even just thinking like over the years of like the most enjoyable experiences that I've had working with bands, it's been on artists. It's been those ones that are kind of prepared to work with me as well. Like, you know, when I was at Rough Trade and they signed Gilla Band, is that as soon as they'd signed the contracts, like the lad out of the band that managed them in the band had sent me a timeline of like, this is what we're thinking. What do you reckon? Like the day, do you know what I mean? Like as soon as I kind of introduced myself as their like product manager, it was like, here you go. And when I met ISO and the Jinx, who I manage up here in Liverpool, was through like the similar situation to what we're in with like mentoring, is that I met them through an artist development program, got on with them really, really well. I kind of pulled apart what they'd done so far, and they said I was brutal. And I don't remember being that bad, but like, you know, but they were kind of like, you know, we'd rather have it on our side than not. And then when we met, I basically went, right, I'm going on holiday for a week. I'll catch up when I get back, but I'm going to send you a list of 10 things to do. And it was just stuff like, make sure that you're set up, you know, that you're registering your songs, make sure that you've read this, make sure that you've looked at that. And like, I met up with them after I got back and they'd done all 10 things. And I was genuinely expecting them to have done about 3. Like, so it is those things where you're just like, yeah, the music, obviously, first and foremost, is amazing, but I really feel like I can do something good with these people.
It's got to be a combination, I think, especially, I think in solo artists as well. Like, I understand the thing, like, nowadays, everyone wants a manager, and I kind of understand why, particularly because there's a lot of people who do it on their own. So there's like, you know, in Kaiser's, there's 5 of us, we can discuss stuff. There's lots of people have ideas and stuff, so it's easy. Being on your own in your bedroom, writing some songs, and then like having another ideas about, I don't know, everything from artwork to how you're going to promote it or whatever, what the timeline's going to be. It's hard, and I think it's good to have someone to bounce those ideas off and all that. But I think a lot of people kind of do it a little bit, and then they go, "Oh, I want a manager," and you're like, "Why do you want a manager?" And it's like to do all the admin and all of isn't how it goes. Actually, you get a manager and then you've probably got to do more stuff because they're going to send you stuff to do.
Yeah, because they're just going to point out more admin that needs doing that you didn't know existed. I think it's the same with labels as well. I think like a few conversations that I've had with artists, not even just recently, just like in the last few years, really, is the kind of like the lack of thinking about deadlines and stuff. And it's just like, if you're working by yourself and you're not sticking to the deadlines that you're setting yourself, then how are you going to do it when you've got to slot into someone else's release schedule? Like, you know, that idea of like kind of once you start working with other people, once you start bringing other people into your project, is that you kind of have a responsibility to them, that you're not going to mess them around by like taking ages to do things, as you said, not replying to emails. and it works both ways as well. Like, but it's just that kind of, you have to be accountable as soon as you start bringing a manager into your project or a label or anybody. It's that accountability that you need to kind of deliver what you say you're going to deliver. Like, yeah, I think that's always a funny one. Like when you start thinking about like, well, if you're just working on your own and you've got mates producing your music for you and you're struggling to kind of get stuff done, then what are you going to do when other people come on board? Like, are you ready?
Yeah, I think that the biggest reason that people don't do as well as they maybe could do is like just that thing of like, right, we've got to have all these things. This is, like I said, a list of 10 things that need to be ready for release, and all the music, videos, and I don't know, registering all the songs and uploading them to certain places. No, these are all the things we've got to do. And like, I'm happy to do some of those things, but some of those things, like, are up to you. And like the number of times you just get to a point where it's you give a deadline of like, we need it to be up there 4 weeks before whatever, but then it's not ready because this has happened and that's happened. I don't know. It's harsh, isn't it? But I think just it's really unlike rock and roll. But I think like being organized and efficient and good a communicator and loads of stuff that would do you really well in any job, I guess. Those things are important now, because I do think like it's a shame in a way, but it is more and more a job. There's more admin and more being on your computer and all that stuff than there ever used to be. It's not just swinging guitars around.
Yeah, I think it's like what everyone's saying as well. It's like, the situation that artists are in, where they have to not only be amazing at creating music, but also marketeers, like tour managers, all of those other things as well. That's the same for management as well now, though, isn't it? If you think about like the role that an artist manager played was to kind of look after the business sides of an artist's career, and now it's like being like the main strategist, being like the person that kind of communicates with all of the other team members, as well as making sure that like the artists are, creating revenue in places that they're supposed to. What's that been like for you, kind of like doing that step from obviously being an artist to now like helping other people be artists? Where was there any, like, I know we talked about publishing earlier, but is there any kind of parts of the industry or parts of like those artist journeys that you've had to really kind of brush up on?
Yeah, I think it's funny because I think like in the past I always thought the publisher, like in early Kaisers, the publisher, although good get your syncs and collect some money and stuff, they weren't like an active participant really in like the success. And I think like now the labels are still active, but it's sort of just like who's got the biggest marketing department. That's it. It's not really. It's not. It can be, I guess, creative, but not particularly. It's like it's a marketing machine, and really, as opposed to, which I guess maybe it always was, but it just seemed like it was a bit more glamorous. Not sure. But what's the question? With thing is, I think it's just it's tricky. Just trying to find a balance, and again, I think it's a shame that kind of bands, I think, are out of vogue or whatever. And I understand why. I think it's to do with like money. Like if you're a solo artist and you can have all the streaming money, then it starts to be something worthwhile. I guess if you split it by 5 of you, then it's probably not, and all those kind of reasons, I'm guessing. But because when there's 5 of you, then you can have all the different personalities. Like in our band, I would say like I'm much more the organizer and whatever, doing a bit of the sort of band management from inside, whereas Ricky is much more of a like, I don't know, likes being at the center of attention, likes I mean, he's great at writing words and stuff, so like each person in the band has their roles, and that and gets on with them. Whereas the same thing as just you, and if it's just a solo artist, the manager I think is taking on all of the other roles. So whatever the person is good at is fine, but then every other role, and that depends on what the artist's like. So I've definitely found like there's loads of stuff I didn't know, and I've always been quite good at sort of saying yes, I'm good at that, and then working out how to do it. So continue to try and do that. There's loads of stuff that I just didn't think I'd be doing, like funding bids and stuff, where just stuff that I always thought I just tried to avoid. And then, like, I'm helping people with, but you know, it's all good. I think it's good to be learning and try and, like, you know, I guess it's a lesson for me of, like, you know, makes me appreciate Kaisers, where I could kind of just be creative and play the shows, and there's not loads and loads of other stuff for me to do. And then the other, you know, see the other side, see how hard it is, I think is good, and try and use whatever skills, contacts I've got to try and just move things along. Also, I just think about, sorry, not really answered the question. I think
Yeah, you are.
Knowing what you're good at and then asking for help is super important. So, and there's loads of people out there who can help with, like, different bits. So for instance, like, we're talking about funding bids, is because I'm sort of doing one. I don't really like that. I don't think I'm that good at it. And, like, another frustrating thing to me is people who you say, oh, you've got these great songs, same thing, you should apply to get some money for, like, I don't know, help you with PR or help you with mixing or whatever. And they go, yeah, right, cool. And they get the form, they fill it in, and they send it, and they don't tell you. And then next time you see them, this is the mentoring, like maybe 8 weeks later, you see them, and they're like, oh yeah, we sent it off. You're like, cool, you're not getting that money because it's going to be rubbish. Whereas, you know, even, like, for me, I think I've done quite a few and helped people with a few, and I know their bits and pieces, but I still sort of ask, like, whiskers up and whiskers again.
Yeah.
Or other people, like, what do you think? You know, do you think I can improve this bit? Can you help me with this thing? Because it's not important who does it, is it? It's important that you get it right for the artist. So,
but the thing is with those as well, you can think that you've written it perfectly, and I think sometimes you get bogged down a little bit in trying to get all of the important things that you need to say in the word count. And sometimes it takes somebody that hasn't written it to just go, you haven't got your point across there. Like, that's not landed. Do you know what I mean? Like, just to kind of make sure that, like, because I feel like you can get in them too much. And, like, yeah, I've written a ton of them, and I made a mistake, like, a while ago, of, like, looking back onto one that I wrote when I first started working with an artist, and it was the worst thing that I've ever read. And then I just felt really embarrassed that somebody has assessed that, and somebody that might know me, like, it's just gone, oh my God, that is the worst thing I've ever read. But yeah, I think funding applications are a major one for everybody. I think, like, there's some people that have just, it's ingrained into them and they've got it. Like, you know, some of my colleagues at Future Yard, with some of the funding that we've got, has been incredible. So I know that, like, in our midst, we've got some really, really, like, great bid writers, but doing it for an emerging artist, doing it to kind of in that, like, level of competition is something entirely different. And it is, you're dead right. It's just like, don't just send it off. Like, you know, just get somebody to have a look at it first is really, really great advice. And I know that some of our lot at the moment are writing help musicians funding bids, so yeah, it's timely. And straight after this, well, I'm assessing momentum as well. So that's always a good one for me to kind of look at what the competition's like. And, like,
my thing is that they kick them out for such, like, I've done some assessing as well, and, like, people are looking for a reason to not give you the money, like, because you've got your budget slightly wrong, or you've said something that's the wrong year or whatever. And so just making sure it's good and it's at least factually correct is super important.
I think it's research, isn't it? It's showing that you've done your homework, and that, like, by kind of getting all of those details right, by that kind of attention to detail, getting your facts right, doing your budget properly, you're basically telling somebody that you've done the hard work. Like, that, you know, you're not just kind of going, my band's doing this, give us some money. It's like, it just shows, like, a level of kind of professionalism that you're taking it very seriously. Yeah.
I think it goes back to the same point as about the 80,000 Spotify uploads per day. Just say per day again, because I always get, like, surprised by that. There's loads and loads of people, and they're all equally good, and, you know, want the money and want the attention or whatever. So what you're doing to make yourself stand out, make sure that, you know, you've got to be perfect, and make, you know, properly sell yourself, that you're the person that would is going to be the best artist on all of those, from funding to like, I don't know, even applying for gigs, like,
yeah,
whatever.
Yeah, definitely. It's like how you can basically prove that it's your opportunity, that it's the right time for you to kind of like do good with it. I've got one more question, unless anybody else wants to ask one, which is, if you if thinking about like your career in Kaisers, like what from your experiences is the standout of what you would kind of like offer advice on to a new artist that they're experiencing? Like what can you take from your journey being in the Kaiser Chiefs that you would think, that's what I need to tell people what to do or what not to do? That was awfully worded. I appreciate it, but like, I'm sure you get what I mean.
Yeah, that, I don't know. Good question. Because it'd be different, I think, at different times, I guess, in my career. But just think, I mean, the keep going thing, I think is always good. And like, I guess I think it's sort of negative, but it's hard work, like whatever you do in life is quite hard. Like, so being a musician, like, don't do it if you think it's just an easy path to loads of money. Do you know what I mean? That's the thing, the kind of advice. It's like, because it's hard, and like, if you've got to love it, I think, really. And the same as if you want to be a footballer or whatever, I think some of these jobs look easy and look, like a laugh and whatever. And I also think counter to that is like, just because you're not the best guitarist, best singer, best whatever, that doesn't discount you from anything. Because like, I actually think that the best, most technical guitar player in the world isn't the most famous. Do you know what I mean? It's like, those things don't. It's about a lot of other things. So yeah, I think just don't be discouraged by, talent. You can have no talent and still make it, as I can prove. And but also you can, but like, it is hard, and like, so you have to love it, and there's lots of tricky moments, and I think like, do it, just enjoy it, and do, like, I'm lucky, because we sort of do something with my friends still, and we're still just about friends. So,
That's not bad going.
Not the case, but yeah, I think I answered that fairly badly as well. But yeah, keep going and don't worry about don't love it more. You got to love it as much as you need to be talented at it.
When like saying about like being in a band with mates, like, did you ever encounter bands that just like hated each other?
I think it doesn't happen immediately, because I think I think it's to do with success, really. I think like, it's really, really easy to be mates when you're everything's going well, and the same with being a manager. It's like the easiest conversations, like the person I know who just never delivers bad news.
Yeah.
It's like, I take the mick out of him for it, because he just can't do it. It's like, something will happen and I'll be like, I'm waiting for you to deliver this bad news, because I even know the bad news already, but I want you to tell me,
I want it to come from you.
Because you just tell me, you'll always say the good news, but you'll never tell us the bad news. So yeah, I think it's easy when, like, bands start, and it's fresh and exciting, and every time, like I said, every time you go to a new city, you're playing somewhere new, and everyone's talking and being positive about you. But I think more difficult when things drop off, or someone's made a decision and it doesn't work out properly, or whatever. But I think it's just about with those things that happens to everybody, and a career is about ups and downs. Like, so you've got to. As I say, like, where people said right at the beginning, where people thought we were like an overnight sensation, we'd had like years of being absolutely drudgery. Like, I'll tell a story. Our first gig, not in Leeds, was in Lincoln, and we played to 2 people, and one fell asleep. That's the story.
Oh my God.
So we deserved, in a way, sold our Brixton Academy at some point because of this terrible time. So and then we obviously had a number with Ruby and whatever, and then later on things not so rosy, and then I think kind of come back up, and then I think it's hard. I think like we've been successful-ish for like 18 years. I think we count now 19 maybe, and that is I'm a bit like, well, that's it doesn't matter how well we do, as long as we're together and we're doing gigs, and it's 19 years, then that's an impressive feat no matter what, because not that many people can manage that. We only lost one person as well. Like most people lose a few more people than that.
Yeah, gotcha. Yeah, so amazing. Well, let's hope for 18 more years of Kaiser Chiefs.
We'll see about that. 18 years of maybe some of the other people.
Oh well, that was so great. Thank you so much for that.
No worries. Hopefully everybody got a little something from it, maybe.
I'm sure they did. Lots of encouragement, and I'll see you probably in Leeds at some point in the near future. Or
nice work.
Future as well. We'll have to get you down.
I'm meant to come over. I haven't come, but I should come. Yes, definitely.
Nice one. Thank you. Thanks everyone for watching. See you dead soon. Cheers. See you later.